Hello everyone, Morgan here. So it is my mission to get you guys as self-reliant as possible. So we're going to be talking about self-reliance and off-grid just way more lately because I want us all to be as off the system as possible. As even if you can't get completely off the system, you know what I mean? I want you to try to do your best to do little things here and there to get as off the system as possible, okay? So that if systems collapse, you're not worried about it. And that's the whole point about being prepared. You're not going to be worried about, getting, the lights going out or, something not being at the grocery store because you will be prepared. But even more so because prices are rising. We are on like the cusps of war. Okay. We're just on the brink of so many things here. And let's get to it. Okay, I'm going to be diving into each one of these skills in future videos. So whatever you want to hear from these 16 off-grid skills, I want you to put down below in the comment section, and I will make sure to put a video about that. So the very first one's water collection and purification techniques. People keep telling me rainwater's toxic, blah, blah, blah. I don't listen to them. Don't you listen to them. Rainwater's not toxic. You can disagree with me all you want. Collect the rainwater. It is water that literally falls from the sky, okay? I understand why people think it might be toxic from the roofs and all these things, but there's lots of ways that you can purify it. And that's why I said water collection and purification techniques, okay? Do not forget about the purification techniques. It is extremely important. You can have the Berkey, you can have tablets, you can have bleach, you can have boiling, you can have all of the above options. Reverse osmosis. I'm so worked up. I'm choking on my own spit here. Okay, so the second one is basic farming and gardening skills. These are extremely important. And while I understand that a lot of people cannot access or have the ability for like a farm, okay, your farm could be anything. It could be just like having a few chickens. It could be having, backyard garden. It could have a container garden. You could, have some rabbits or some quail or other things like this that are not necessarily like a farm that you may traditionally think of, that's like a million acres or whatever, right? We all have our little tiny farms or our big farms, whatever you have available to you. And if you can't do that type of farming, maybe you can only garden a little bit indoors and vertical and container and these kinds of things. Maybe you can only garden those certain ways. And maybe you can't have animals at all, or maybe you can only have like indoor rabbits or things like that. Great. Find your local sources. And we're going to be talking about that at the very end, but find local sources in which you can source all these things. Get into a CSA and all these other things. The third one is going to be food preservation and storage techniques. So you do not need a garden in order to preserve food. I keep screaming this to the rooftops. You don't need a garden to preserve food. Go to the frozen food section, grab some frozen strawberries, and whip up some jam, okay? That's food preservation right there. That's like the only way that I'll buy jam these days is if I make it. You can can lots of frozen vegetables. You can dehydrate frozen vegetables. You can dehydrate canned foods as well. You can preserve so many ways without having your own garden. Of course, look to seasonal foods. If you're not just exclusively getting things from the frozen section, look to seasonal foods. Seasonal vegetables, look to things on sale, all these things in which you can get them at supreme prices, can it or dehydrate it or preserve it in some other way. So the next one is going to be animal husbandry, including raising and caring for livestock. I think this is just a great skill no matter whether you have the animals or not, okay? I want you to see if you know anybody or can learn about it through books or whatever you need to do in order to learn about animal husbandry, how to take care of animals. Super important. Number 5, basic carpentry and construction skills. Boy, am I lucky. I am just one of the luckiest women in the world because I married such a handy person, okay? He knows about electrical. He knows how to construct and build. He knows about plumbing. He knows literally everything. And my poor husband, right? Like I have all these ideas and I just come to him and I say, do it. No, we work on it together, I promise. But he really is, the brains behind constructing and fixing these things. And I'm super lucky. But I like to learn these things too. And I think it's really important that people have basic understandings of how certain things work. If you don't know how, or you don't have your spouse, get on YouTube. Go take a class. There's online classes, there's in-person classes. Home Depot was holding classes. I don't know if they still do. Anyway, go learn. All right, so talking about that alternative power, the next one, the seventh one, is solar power and maintenance. Now, I don't want to just talk about solar power. I want to talk about alternative energy power, hydro, wind, solar, passive. There's all these ways. There's also geothermal. There's so many ways. There's earth sheltered, buildings to make it more efficient. There's just so many ways for alternative energy. And I love solar. I love it. I love it. I love it. But there's lots of other ways that you can generate energy, and maybe you have to decrease that energy a little bit. I talk about this a lot in my YouTube members area. I've talked about this a lot recently. So if you head down below, you can join for just $1 a month. But I talk about a lot of this stuff, and I'm going to be talking about a lot more in depth in the YouTube member section. Of course, here on the regular YouTube as well. But anyway, so next one's going to be plumbing and waste disposal. And more specifically, I think people really have to understand that if you're on a septic, you got to pump that septic. If you are on a sewage system, that could back up and you have no control over that sewage system. So what are you going to do otherwise? Are you going to have an outhouse, a compost toilet, a bucket toilet, right? And then some way to dispose of that trash as well. How are you going to dispose of trash? Are you going to reduce your trash? Yes. Are you going to throw away the trash? Where are you going to throw it away? Are you going to bury it? Are you going to burn it? Several ways to dispose of trash, but you have to figure out now which ways are going to be the best for you. Also, composting is another way to dispose of a lot of organic material. All right, the next one, which I think is super essential, is first aid and medical care. So this is essentially important, especially important, because when you're off grid, or let's say it's an emergency or disaster, and nobody can get to you because, well, it's an emergency and everybody is needing help, right? Or everybody is struggling, or whatever the case may be. So you are sick, right? Or you broke your leg. How are you going to administer help either for yourself or for somebody else? Do you have necessary medical supplies? And I have a video coming up that's going to be talking about some of that stuff. But having even the basic first aid kits and knowledge is going to be super important. I don't recommend just having first aid kits and then being one and done, with first aid. Learn, go take first aid classes, go watch YouTube videos, go do all these things. You can up your first aid knowledge. All right, the next one is going to be sewing and repair in general, like clothing repair, tent repair, all these other things. I mean, you can make clothes last a lot longer. I mean, knitting, right? I knit this hat. This is warmth now. I've knit scarves. That's extra warmth for us. My friend just knits all these great things. She knit little purses for my girls recently. She's so talented. Alaska redhead. She's so talented with those crocheting needles. Way more talented than I'll ever be. But I'm pretty good with the sewing machine, you know what I mean? And I can sew up some things. I can read a pattern. Can you do that? So, can you figure that stuff out? Super important, even to just learn to mend things. All right, basic mechanical repair and maintenance. Now, this goes along with the solar power and stuff like that. Like, let's say you have generators, or you have your solar set up. All these other things, they require mechanical, repair sometimes. Even if you only have, the basic of mechanics, your vehicle, or even if it's like a real simple thing like an off-grid mower or stuff like that. Like, let's say these things just stop working for some reason. Could you try to fix it? How would you source parts in your local area? Like, could you go to neighbors? These kinds of things. Like, how how to diagnose and then repair those things. Okay, so the next one's going to be natural resource management. I think what I mean by this is how to regrow your own firewood. Like, if you're using heat as a source, or sorry, wood as a source for heat, do you know how to kind of like regrow those trees? How are you sustaining this? And yes, you'll probably be planting more trees, but there's a sustainable way of like regrowing the trees that'll make it a lot faster, is what I mean. It's like this whole process. But anyway, so as far as that goes, what about wild foraging and hunting and fishing and looking to nature for your things. So could you chop down a tree and then cut it up and use that for like wood to build something? You know what I mean? Lots of people used chainsaws. I mean, they just used hand saws for a super long time. And of course, those log cabin homes, boy, those logs are heavy. Just be aware, making log cabin homes is a lot of stinking work. Watch some YouTube videos of people making log cabin homes. Whoa, even just lifting and like pushing those logs up, higher and higher. Whew, those people were beasts. All right. Next one is going to be cooking from scratch. So, using real basic ingredients, few appliances. I've basically ditched my KitchenAid, and my husband's real sad about that because like I just don't use it anymore because I like to just do it by hand. It's much easier to me. I like it way better to just make my dough and everything by hand. Very few things I find I have to put into an appliance. I do like my toaster. That's like one thing that I really, really like. I really like my ovens, of course, learning how to cook with cast iron and over a fire, all these things. And then, of course, going back to the cooking from scratch with the ingredients that you have on hand, which could be limited. So how are you going to make a really nice, nutritious meal with these things that you have on hand? Next one's going to be basic navigation and survival skills. Okay, so I feel like with basic navigation, like this is especially important if you're going to be going out on missions, to hunt or to fish or all these other things. You are going to be going out into these places and you'll need to come back, right? So navigation is super important to know where you are, where you could go, where you've been, um, navigating to new places, knowing how to track animals, all these things. And that's all part of navigation. But navigation is also part of, watching the weather and all these other things. It's a whole thing. So navigation, general survival skills, let's say, you're trekking out to go hunting and it's the middle, it's getting dark and you're going to have to make a fire. You're going to have to do shelter, you're going to have to get these things going. Of course, preparation is key, but having those basic wilderness survival skills, I think is really important for the home as well. Not just if you're going trekking out in the middle of nowhere, but at the home too. Basic wilderness survival skills is just important. How to find water, how to know that water is going to be good, how to, wild forage, how to be one with nature, I sound woo like that, but seriously, be one with nature, okay? What type of wild edibles could you use for, modern medicine? It's all these things. And that's actually the next one I want to talk about. Number 15, we're almost there, is learning wild, not wild, but medicinal wild herbs. It's so important that we learn medications that are outside of just over-the-counter medications. I store over-the-counter medications, but where do you think our medicines came from? They came from herbs. They came from plants, okay? And then we just, synthesized it and scienced it up and made it, for the mass public. But learning about medicine, and if you guys want to know more about this, I'm a huge fan of it, okay? And I will teach you all these things. I will show you the books. I will do all this stuff because I'm a big fan, okay? But the last one's going to be about community. Remember how I was talking before about in the very beginning about how I don't want you to do this on your own? Because I don't. It's about community. And it's not just that, people are, not supposed to live by themselves. No, forget that. No, it's just the fact that you can't do everything yourself. And that whole, it takes a village, sure, but it takes a village of people that are already committed to a certain goal. It's people that are already committed to the fact of living a certain life. So you got to find those people. You got to find your people now. Trying to find them in an emergency or disaster or apocalypse or whatever we're talking about, very difficult, okay? And so you have to create that community now. Find those local resources now. Find those local farms now. Find get to know your neighbors the very best that you can now, okay? Get to know your local region now. You need community, just straight up, because you will not be able to do everything yourself. Speaking from experience, okay? All right. Well, that's it. And if you want me to, I have a whole list of everything that I talked about in this video down below in the description. If you want me to go into further detail about any one of these, let me know. As well as I have a bunch of videos in the past. In the past, I'm going to put a few playlists down below to where you can go check out some other things. But thank you all so much for watching Conquer Tomorrow by Preparing Today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.